And before we get going, here's a word about our sponsors. SDHQ Motorsports is a powerhouse 30,000 square foot facility with 45 family members reporting for duty. This single owner, single location business is based out of Gilbert, Arizona. It can handle anything from a hot rod, daily driver, pre-runner, race vehicle, half-track or Kugelwagen, or just about any other project you need help with. Their skilled staff with hundreds of years of combined experience eats, sleeps, and breathes performance. So go check them out at sdhqmotorsports.com or check them out on Insta at sdhqmotorsports. The We Happy Few 506 podcast is brought to you in partnership with the Gettysburg Museum of History, home of the Major Dick Winters collection and the largest assortment of authentic Band of Brothers artifacts in the world. Visit the free museum at 219 Baltimore Street in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, or at www.gettysburgmuseumofhistory.com, and on the YouTube channel, The History Underground, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Well, hello, and welcome along to another We Happy Few 506 podcast, The Nearly Men, with my beautiful co-host who's glowing red for some reason, Doug Allen. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm very good, thanks, Matthew. How's it going?
Not too bad. Just got caught in a rainstorm, so I'm a bit bedraggled. So yeah, you're pointing out that I look sleepy. I'm missing my nap. My little baby son usually sleeps at this time, but my elder son has stolen him, so he's asleep under my elder son at the moment.
So what's the hourly sleep like or the nightly sleep at the minute? Like how many hours you getting, if you're getting any?
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's not too
Is it
bad.
2 hourly feeds for the baby?
Yeah, he's a bit
2
better
hours?
than that. He's a bit better than that now.
Yeah.
But my elder son has taken to sleepwalking as well, so
Oh no.
waking up the other night with him tinkering with the fan, talking about something completely bizarre. So that was that was fun. Anyway, we should get on with it. So we have another guest this week. This is another part of our Masters of the Air Appreciation Society podcast. So we have this week we have Jessica Ridge. Jessica, trying not to put any type of judgment or intonation in my but cool, Jessica. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm all good. Yeah, currently on my wife's laptop because mine
Right.
is
Okay. So
completely collapsed.
right. We in fact have Dean Ridge. This how's things? Where are you?
I'm currently in Birmingham, but yeah, things are all good.
Is that where you live, or do you working up there, or?
Yeah, live up here now. Yeah, it started off working up here, and then a few years ago decided to put some roots down. Me and my wife and my little boy, and we were just like, yeah.
Oh really?
Turned out
How
pretty
old's your
good.
son?
14 months.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So you and Matt, I mean, but how come Dean looks like the picture of health, and Matt, you look bedraggled, and
It's a filter.
fatherhood is obviously you're looking very good for it, Dean, I must
Well,
say.
we've only got one at the minute, so that helps.
Yeah.
I've got three. So.
Yeah.
Also, it's very hot here, so I'm like a bit like, ooh, and I got caught in a rainstorm, and then it's the whole thing. But it's all a disguise. Don't worry about it, Doug. I'm here with you. My mental faculties are good. So how's life with you then, Dean? How's things going since Masters?
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, it's been all right. It's been quite a long time, so it's yeah, it's a bit weird stretching back, sort of going, oh shit, yeah, that was nearly 4 years ago. No,
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
COVID, wasn't it? When you
yeah, that's the
filmed it.
thing.
Well,
Yeah,
when was the expected, was the release date ever changed, or was it always intended to be, it was last year,
Um,
wasn't it?
to
What
be
point
honest,
last year did it get
no
released?
one no one really knew because yeah, I think everyone was it was more of a post-production thing. Once everything
Mm,
was wrapped, I think it was more a case of dealing with what they had. So there was this expected timeline, I guess,
mm,
of like a year and a half, something like that. But then, every time you check back in, you get called back in for ADR like 6 months later, and you'd be like, "Whoa, okay, I thought we'd
yeah,
already covered this." But that's because there was just so much VFX stuff from
yeah,
the volume work that they weren't they weren't gonna fuck it up. Do you know what I mean? They were gonna take as long as they needed to do
yeah,
it, which the end result, great. But when you're waiting, you're like, cool, whatever.
Yeah, because that wasn't the release of Band of Brothers, wasn't that delayed as well? Not for the same reasons. Was it delayed because of the start of the war in Afghanistan? I remember something like that. Wasn't that? It was supposed to be 2000 or 2000, wasn't it? Or 2001. Didn't it get released later? Just
I don't know about that. I don't know. It's still
yeah,
released in September 2001, so it's
yeah, because it
pretty.
was September the 11th, I think, delayed it as well.
Yeah, it did. Well, they
Yeah,
knocked off the numbers massively anyway.
yeah, yeah.
They went from episode one, everyone was watching episode two, and was like, yeah, I don't really want to watch that anymore.
Yeah.
A bit
So
full
it's
on.
been it's been a kind of a long wait, Dean, I guess, to see yourself in such a huge show, and because
Yeah,
it's exciting, right? I mean, we all were excited when, to kind of watch the
yeah,
first couple of episodes when it came out, and it's obviously been a long time coming.
yeah, definitely. You kind of you go through that stage of like, oh yeah, yeah, I'm really excited. But I mean, I was quite lucky in a sense that I'd been in a few things beforehand, so the novelty of like waiting to see yourself was a little bit,
Yeah,
it worn off a little bit. Obviously, I was excited to see the show in
yeah,
its entirety. So I wasn't chomping at the bit in that sense, but
mm,
weirdly, like 3 years after we shot it, it was actually quite nice to have that space because you kind of forgot
mm,
to judge yourself after 3 years. You're just like, oh, this is actually quite pleasant to just
mm,
see the entire thing. You're like, oh yeah, I'm in it. I forgot
mm.
about that. You're
Yeah,
like,
it's also nice to get the bits on your show reel as well. You want to, that's what I wanted was, yeah, I
yeah.
want to get it on my show reel, and I'm waiting
Oh,
for years.
that forever chase. Do you know what? That seems to happen more and more and more. There's a few things that I've shot that I just don't think I'm ever gonna see.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that you wait and you wait and you're like, oh, there's something else I did that was like we finished it in 2022, still not out. And we're like, come on.
yeah.
But
That's
that's
the
that's the
business,
way
isn't
with
it?
streaming these days. They can just hold on to stuff, can't they?
Yeah, well, I think it's how the platforms work, isn't it? Because obviously they have to. I think the whole philosophy behind these subscription platforms is, you have to have content. Content is everything. So they
Mm,
just buy up everything and then stage its release,
yeah, exactly.
so that, I mean, because if you're on it and then you think, well, I've seen everything, nothing new's coming on, and then your business model kind of fails immediately. So then they stagger it so they can buy it and then not show it until 6, 8, 10 months, 12 months
Yep,
later. Yeah, it's a strange thing, isn't it?
they're the
Yeah,
gatekeepers. But yeah,
yeah,
It doesn't. It
in
doesn't
answer,
help that you spend 18 months to 2 years to 4 years in your case shooting something, and then
yeah,
someone watches it in 3.5 days. It's like, come on, fellas,
cool, yeah.
spread it
yeah,
out a bit.
Yeah, it's a real time warp. But yeah, going back to what you're saying, it was nice to watch it when it finally came out and
mm,
see because everything was so granular when we shot it. You're so in your own little world of
mm,
the crew that you're in, the particular story that you're in.
mm,
You just lose all sense of what everyone else was doing. So
yeah,
Mm.
especially with all the COVID sort of breaks that we had to have,
yeah.
it just completely threw everyone's schedules out of whack. So when you actually got to see the whole thing, you were like, oh, you were really rooting for some of the other lads because you were like, fuck, I actually got to see what you were doing. That's really cool. And you'd ring them up and be like, oh, that was wicked to see
Yeah.
everything that you'd done, and that the other guys had done as well.
Yeah. What was we'll start from the beginning. I mean, Matt will
Hmm.
lead you on with the questions, but what was your casting process like? When was you cast? Were you cast early or late? And what was your
Um,
experience of that? How did that?
it went on for forever, and it kept going away and coming back. Um, and that I have to admit, at that point, it was quite stressful because it'd been COVID, and like no one had been working,
Mm,
no one had had any auditions, and you're like, is anything ever going to happen again?
mm,
And then literally just moved up here. I had no work for like I think it was like 15, 16 months, something like that. And I was like,
yeah.
no acting work, sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
I've been like, I was proper struggling, like go back on the tools with my old man. And then like you get this thing like, oh, so this is Masters of the Air. This is this thing. Do you want to audition for it? And I originally went up for Egan and I was like, what? Um, And weirdly, I'd actually heard about the project years before, when it was called the Mighty Eighth. There'd been like rumors of it floating around. I read some article in what did I read it?
Variety or something.
Yeah, Variety or something like that. Back in like 2015, they were talking about Spielberg wanting to produce a new one about the air. And, I'm living in a grotty student flat. And I was like, oh, I want to be in that. I want to be in that. And then when it finally came round and it was called this, I was like, hold on, I know what this is. And then
Mm.
obviously, all of the stress from not having any work, you put a lot of pressure on yourself.
Mm.
So
So what was
yeah,
it? Was it just a self tape that you
yeah,
sent
it was
initially,
all
and
tapes. The whole thing was
you
tapes.
didn't have any face-to-face meetings through the whole process? How many recalls did you have? How many self
did
tapes did you have to do?
I did 3 or 4 in the end.
Yeah,
Um, there was obviously like the couple for Egan, and then that went away, and you thought, all right, well, maybe that was a bit above my pay grade.
yeah.
And then like a couple of months went by, and then something else came up, and I was like, oh shit, it's back. And then that one, you sort of did another tape, poured everything into it, and then that just disappeared as well. And I think that was like October time. And I
Wow.
was like, shit. And then again, gone back to work, doing all this sort of stuff. Then literally in the February, they rang up and they were just like, do you want to do a casting? I was like, what do you mean? They were like, do you want to just speak to them? And I was like, oh shit, okay, yeah, cool. Very much out of the blue. And then we just read for Snyder, and they were like, yeah, cool. Like 2 weeks later, you're in.
And
Proper.
was that how long before that was that decision before you went off to your kind of boot camp?
Oh man, like a month,
Oh,
maybe.
right. So you
No,
did
wait,
have quite
hold
a
on.
bit of lead time then.
No, actually, no, it's a lie. It was like 2 weeks. Yeah,
Oh,
two
okay.
weeks because they were suddenly like, "Oh yeah, you need to be in Oxford. You need to do this, do this." And I was like, "Whoa, cool,
Yeah.
sounds good."
And did you do a lot of research in between that time? Did you read books and stuff? Did you
Yes.
know who you were playing, like
No, not
yeah,
to begin with. When the whole process started, way
yeah.
back in the summer of 2020, I began reading Masters of the Air because bit of a history buff anyways. I like reading on that
Mhm.
sort of stuff. So I thought, yeah, I'll get it. And obviously just started ticking through it. And when the auditions went away, I thought, well, this is fascinating anyway, carry on.
Mm.
And then yeah, when we got it, obviously you just dive straight in, don't you? Trying to find
Yeah.
out as much as you possibly can about this person. But at the time that was really difficult to come by information, really difficult, especially about him in particular. There was so few things to grasp onto. And obviously, the 100th bomb
Mm.
website was probably the best resource there was to begin
Mm.
with, or to start the search for sure.
Yeah, we found that from a lot of cast members, haven't we, Matthew? Where since the show has come out, the amount of information on the individuals that you portrayed
Mm.
has just increased exponentially. It's just, there's a lot more. It's just put the spotlight of the world kind of on it. And have you found out more since it's been released? Have you gone back to the hundreds website? Because we have Matt Mabry on, don't we? Who's obviously one of the leading guys in that, and kind of updates the websites and finds out all the information. Have you found out anything? Any surviving family or anything since? Have you
Yeah,
gone back to
definitely.
it?
So the first thing that I got was from the 100th bomb Instagram page. They sent me a message
Mm,
because I put it to bed. I'd watched the series and I was really happy with it, and I thought, yeah, that's great. But I'd originally found this image of Richard Snyder, but it was crap. Like it was from an old newspaper by the looks of it. It was proper smudged. It was you got the rough sense of him. You knew he was in his airman's uniform with his hat and all that.
yeah.
And then they messaged and said, "Oh, we've actually found the proper version of that photo," which was amazing because it was proper. You could see everything. It was a real.
Mm,
It was one of his one of his ground crew had a copy of it.
mhm.
And they'd obviously got in contact and sent it in, which that was
Oh,
fascinating.
wow.
Just to see
Yeah.
him in the flesh properly,
Yeah.
um, just to genuinely put a face to a name and to a story, and yeah, that really grounded it for me, which was amazing. And then they've since sent a message about someone else, another one of the ground crew. It seemed that he'd had a really good relationship with the crew members, the ground crew members, and about I can't remember the fella's name. I'll try and pull it up in a minute, but about how he was devastated, obviously, when their plane went down, and
Yeah.
how he remembered them being a real sort of friendly unit. There wasn't like a separation between the flight crew and
Yeah. Yeah.
ground.
Yeah. You never really, well, I mean, just dramatically, you never really focus on ground crews, do you? What they went through, and the losses they went through. I mean, the arm mouth in your mouth rather every time some of the planes come back, and you're thinking, who's not coming back this time? Like you said, I made a great, bond with these guys that they're keeping up in the air, and then for them not to come back must just be heartbreaking.
And they're there day in and day out. They
Yeah,
were there from the start of the war until long after the war. They saw everyone.
Yeah, because they weren't part. It was only the air crews that were part of the 25 or 50 missions. The ground crews were just there for the duration, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
They'd been, and seen the. Yeah, I mean, it must be a strange feeling to, work with a group of guys and then, they go on a mission, they don't come back, and then you're assigned to another group, and then they go on a mission, they don't come back, and you just have to keep doing your job. And yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
And what do we know about Lieutenant Snyder? What do we know? What are the salient points that you gleaned that you're like,
There
right,
weren't
I
a
mean,
great
even if it's
deal.
just what you were told on production, like this is what he did within the crew or whatever, like what can you tell us about
So in terms of his role, or like where he came from, or his family, or
Yeah, where he came
everything?
from.
Everything you know, we're sponges here,
yeah.
Jessica.
So again, there wasn't an awful lot to go off of. We knew that he was from Kansas City in
Okay.
Missouri. His dad was a physician, a local physician, um, and that's about it in
Mm,
terms of he didn't have a girlfriend at the time, or none that is written about. He didn't marry because he
mm,
was young, um, and he shipped out, but he didn't ship out as an officer. It's a rank that doesn't exist. Definitely doesn't exist in the British Air Force, and I'm not sure if it exists in the US Air Force anymore. So he was a flight officer, which wasn't, it was a non-commissioned officer rank. So he was a co-pilot, but he wasn't a captain, he wasn't a lieutenant or anything like that. So
Right.
I was fascinated about that as him being a non-commissioned man, but in the same seat of responsibility as some of the other pilots.
yeah, I wonder how that happened.
I'm
How,
not
how,
sure.
how would it just been numbers, Matthew? Like you got to fill the seats, you got to fill the roles, and I guess. But wouldn't you make someone a captain or a lieutenant, if you're
Interesting point,
co-pilot?
and I can only stab at it from what I know from the military, but often non-commissioned officer ranks, things like a first sergeant or a staff sergeant or regimental sergeant major, they're incredibly important individuals, and they don't really. That's where they kind of bottom out. You know what I mean? And actually, their pay grade is higher than a lot of the young officers above them. So I don't know whether there would have been some system by which you'd have to have been promoted up to the element of lieutenant. But what you do is you give them a high non-commissioned role. So basically, they're more important than the junior officers. Do you know what I mean? But they don't then have to be promoted through up into that rank.
Yeah. But it
It's a
must be. It's so. Did you find out about anything about his enlistment and how long he trained for before he was, sent to Europe? Did you have any of that information, Dean?
No,
Because
because
like we speak a lot about with the other actors, and we had it as well. They gave us a file on all our guys, and some of us with guys. The Altamore who I portrayed, it was just literally like 2 pages. That's all we had, and other people had really quite comprehensive military history files on them. But it doesn't sound like
to be
that
honest,
they
I
had that.
think whatever happened with the production, and I
Mm,
can't really speak for, like Austin and Callum and that, but for where we were at, there wasn't. It was very much left to your own devices. It was take what you can from the script, take what you can from history, but we weren't given anything on, so to speak, by production in terms of a portfolio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so from there, obviously you went to the boot camp and obviously co-pilot. So what did your boot camp comprise of? Because the sense we get is that everyone had their own kind of individual ones, because there's sort of, in our one, we were all put together in a barracks because we're all doing basically the same thing. We're all riflemen, essentially. But obviously the role was a lot more technical for the Air Force. What did yours entail, and how was it?
So I really enjoyed it, but it was definitely not a boot camp in terms of putting you through your paces. But then, of course, these are flyboys. They weren't intended to have that style of training, and they definitely did mimic that. So we went to this base, this summer camps type place with all the barracks and everything in it, and everyone, you get there at 5:30, 5:45 in the morning, and you get suited and booted, make sure you're in your everything's top notch, dressed to the nines in all of your ones and everything. And then you go out and it'd be parade and things like that. And a lot of it was lecturing, and then a lot of it was actually sort of the routine of the day. And then with the breaks, everyone would sort of split into their little crews, and you'd hang out, and as everyone's chain smoking and drinking tea and coffee and stuff like that. But because it was a no phone job, it was no one was allowed off site sort of thing. You built this kind of camaraderie through the conversation, and then everyone would go into lectures about their specific roles, and you'd sort of, be passing notes to each other. Like,
was there like a mock-up of an aircraft? I mean, were you taught how to sort of, what all the basic controls were? I mean, did it?
Absolutely. So that came later on. So what would happen is we'd have these lectures about bomb priority, about targets, about what the different planes were when you were looking at them in the sky, things like that. But then, there was mock-ups, cockpits and simulators that you would go in pairs normally. If you could, it would be your pilot and co-pilot, or it would just be you, depending on everyone's schedules and stuff like that. But they were super hot on making sure that the controls were pinpoint accurate. So
wow.
I can't remember the chap's last name, but his name was Ty, and he was an American pilot, and he's probably one of the last few people that can actually fly a B-17.
Wow.
And he was so hot on going through everything. We had our takeoff checklists, we had our landing checklists, we had what to do, drills to do if engine 4 was out, what would you do with the others?
And
that was fascinating.
Yeah, I bet it was. And obviously you were using some of this stuff in the actual scenes as well, depending on where you were, whether you were taxiing out or this, and you would just get on with it and just kind of run through procedures of switches and things that you had
that was very specifically choreographed.
Wow, yeah.
Like they did not, they were like, if the camera's looking at it, it has to be correct.
Yeah.
No matter what.
I love that stuff. Was it good?
I completely agree with them. Like, you don't want to be just going, yes.
You don't want to pretend to flick switches and
You don't want to annoy the nerds, is what you don't want to do, because they'll be getting on the keyboard straight away if you get it completely wrong.
But also, if you're gonna spend all that money making sure that it looks correct and that you're gonna do as many practical effects as possible, come on, get the controls right.
Absolutely.
It deserves that respect. If that's what it's about, it deserves that respect.
100%. Yeah.
So I have a question actually leading on from that. So with us, the one thing you could get 30 push-ups for, or running laps, or whatever the heck it was that they decided we'd have to do, was if you called your M1 or whatever weapon you had a gun. That was it. It's a weapon. It's not a gun. A gun is a howitzer or cannon or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So is there something that you could have gotten wrong in that respect? If you said the wrong thing, you were down push-ups or?
Not particularly, because the two, obviously we had Dale Die, and he was for our initial training. but because that was so broad and it was more of an intellectual sort of process, there wasn't much backwards and forwards between us and him. Um, unless we were asking questions. And don't get me wrong, there were a few stupid questions, I'm sure, but none that could get you in trouble. And when it came to the actual flight controls, there was no punishment because you were getting stuff wrong, left, right, and center to begin with. Everyone that was in a cockpit had to spend hours in that cockpit trying to figure it out because it was baffling. It was genuinely baffling to begin with. You think, how are there so many controls in this thing, and how can you be dealing with these when you're actually under pressure?
Did anyone in your crew get picked on by Captain Dowdye or have to serve, the punishment of the diamond push-up or whatever?
No one in my crew, no. There was a couple of other lads that I think he got fairly sick of their questions because they were asking questions that like weren't necessarily pertinent to what we were learning. I think they started to get on his wick a little bit. So he'd then sort of berate them in front of the class.
So let me get this right. There were no push-ups.
Not particularly, no. Like I said, we were soft officers.
Yeah.
In a different
that, that was Dean Ridge. Thanks for joining us. Goodbye. No, we're just jealous. We're jealous. We're utterly jealous.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Younger, better, and more intelligent, all of you, than we are. So I'll ask about crew. I'll ask about the stuff that you shot, obviously. So what was your first day of filming like? Before I get on to more.
First day of filming.
Because that's always like a mind-blowing experience on something like this.
Yeah, it is. It was pretty balmy because we were all on base in the in the recreation of Thought Abbott's, which again, that was mad. They were just like, oh, do you know what? There's no point building a set. It's cheaper just to build a like for like remake. So they did, and that was so cool. Because obviously it was just tin and plyboard anyway, wasn't it? So they just built it like for the measurements. So that was amazing. Everyone being there in the full garb, busy all day, trucks going around. Like, yeah, that's pretty cool. You couldn't ask for it to be more immersive in that sense. But yeah, my first day was after our second mission, where my character gets his hands frozen to the top of the weapon. Not a gun, weapon, as I just found out.
I actually think that might be a gun. So
that's a big gun.
I think it's a gun. But...
yeah. So he's in the hospital recovering from his wounds, and there was originally a longer scene there, but that was my first day, and it was just like straight in with Barry and Austin, and I was like, cool, great, sounds good. So yeah, that was definitely thrown in the deep end on that sense.
How was that? How's it walking in your first days with Barry and Austin? It's like, that's quite a high bar.
Yeah, it's a very high bar. Funnily, at the time, Austin, like Elvis hadn't come out or anything at that point. So everyone kind of knew who he was, but it wasn't a massive thing at all. And he's such a nice bloke as well, that it wasn't a problem in that sense. I'd seen Barry in quite a few things. There was a film that he'd done a few years ago called Calm with Horses, which I was a massive fan of. Really, really good film. So I was really excited to work with him for sure. But yeah, no, they were great. They were perfectly amenable. I wasn't worried in that sense whatsoever. Again, I've kind of been.
You've been doing it.
It wasn't my first job, so I wasn't.
Yeah. You've been doing it a while. Yeah. What was it like when you got into the actual aircraft setup with the screens around?
Yeah,
what was that like? What was that must have been mind blowing.
Yeah, absolutely mad. Like when I heard that they were going to be shooting on a volume, I fully dorked out because I'm a huge fan of the technology that's coming in these
Yeah.
days, and I'd heard about what they'd done on The Mandalorian, and they were like, "Oh, we're going to shoot on a volume." They'd done it on The Mandalorian. I was like, "No way!" So when you finally get in there and you see it, and the plane is not just stationary; it's on a hydraulic rig that is synced to the asset that's on the screen. So Messerschmitt flies over, fires its cannon, the whole rig goes like
Wow.
that
So
was
cool.
incredible. Like that was
Yeah.
really special for sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
That must have
Stressful,
been
but
nuts.
good, really, really
Yeah.
good. And
There was
the trouble.
no point that you were pretending to be the Mandalorian. Go, this is the way. Yeah.
No, not at that point. Not at
A
that
little
point.
bit in your mind. A little bit in your mind, you were.
The only downside of the plane stuff was because there'd been so many delays. It was now we started shooting all of the plane stuff in July, and it was
It's
so
hot.
hot.
And you had to wear like 4 layers as well, didn't you?
Yeah, so you've got your because they wanted everything to be as real as possible. They essentially
Yeah.
gave you the real clothes to begin with, and it was only when guys started passing out that they were like, "Do we actually need the stuff underneath?"
Yeah.
Because you've got
Keeps
the heated suit that you would plug in. Then
Yeah.
you've got, depending on which position you were in the plane, you've got the leather trousers with the fur inside. You've got your shirt, tie, fur jacket,
Wow. Yeah.
life vest, parachute harness. I've probably got that
Yeah.
in wrong order now. I can't remember.
That's
No,
a lot, isn't it? And
oh,
didn't they? Didn't we hear, Matt, that one of the other guys say that they started bringing cool ice packs in or
yeah,
cool suits in as well that you could
yeah,
wear?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I wore one when we were doing my stuff in the tail section, because it was just you, the tail section. You're essentially in a washing machine. It's the
Yeah.
size of a hollowed out washing machine, and you're doing all your scenes. You got all your gear on. You're
Mm.
trying to give it as much as you can when they're
Yeah.
telling you it's this stressful situation, and you're trying to picture everything, and
Mm.
they're calling out different directions. All right, now we need you to be shooting from 11 o'clock low going up to 1 o'clock high, trying to
Mm.
follow all these instructions. And to be fair, at one point I was like, I blacked out for a little bit because you can't you can't have the cool suit on while you're doing a take,
Right.
because it has a pump. It's basically a big
Ah, so the noise. Right. Yeah.
exactly. It pumps the water through, and then
Yeah.
when you do a take, you cut it, but you would just keep rolling on these takes
Yeah.
because it's easier than cutting. But once you've been in there for, I think the longest I was in there was 4.5 hours non-stop, and I was just like, I just cracked
Yeah.
because I was like, I'm gonna have a little lie down, and the medic was like, nah, maybe don't do that. Let's just make sure you're okay.
Yeah. Wow.
Don't go
But
to sleep.
a few of the lads had that. Yeah, a few people.
Yeah, we've heard from
Especially in the
others.
tail.
Yeah. 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 Wow.
Yeah. Panic attacks too. I can understand that.
Yeah,
Very
Yeah,
possible.
especially the tail gun. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
yeah, it was you know, it just gives you even more, like, we're making a story, and a little bit of sweat and effort goes into making a story, and then you actually think, Christ, that's the real dimensions. You're having a
Mm.
gunfight in that thing. That's
Yeah,
yeah,
it's nuts, isn't it?
yeah. You're not dodging anything in that.
No, no, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I'll just go back to the time with Barry Keegan and
Mhm.
Tim Butler. I'm just interested about what's the difference in their technique? Because I feel like Barry's
Technique.
gets in
I
quite
mean,
deep by the look of things, and
very what? Sorry.
it feels like Barry gets in just from watching it. It feels like he gets in quite deep. Um, whereas if maybe does Austin like feel his way into things more? And like,
I don't
what's the
know. So I can't really. I only had a couple of scenes with Austin, so
yeah,
I would be very. I wouldn't want to second guess anything he's doing. I wouldn't want to second guess anything that Barry's doing anyway. But all I would say is that he's no, he's very free and easy, very free and easy.
Mm.
No stress. Like rock up. I wouldn't say in all of the stuff that we were doing, there was none of the there was no bravado, shall we say? There was none of
Mm.
the I'm being very serious now.
Mm.
I wouldn't tarnish him with that brush at all. He was very free and easy, took stuff on the fly. So yeah.
Was there any, obviously with these sort of big productions with very well-known writers and stuff, were you sticking to the script to the comma essentially, or were you allowed to
No,
move
so
things around?
interestingly, we would stick to the script massively, but Carrie, who directed the first 3 episodes, he would have an idea and we would just have to go with it.
Okay.
Obviously, it would still be within the bounds of the story.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
He's not just going rogue in that sense, but like a lot of the plane stuff that you see in the show in that early part is added on from when the script was written.
Right.
It
Okay.
got fleshed out so much more in terms of dialogue that was happening in the plane, in terms
Yeah.
of those moments, because there's so much technicality involved with which plane is where and who got hit when and all of that I think in the initial script some of the human moments might have been missed. So
Yeah.
when everyone actually got in their respective planes for those respective moments, they were like, oh shit, there's way more leg room in this. There's you wanna let it play out for that little bit longer. You wanna
Want the
let
audience to sit with it. Yeah.
exactly. So that was brilliant because when you look at your script, you're like, oh, I say my 2 lines.
Yeah.
That's a shame. But then actually, when we got into it, Carrie was like, no, carry it on here. You're seeing some more stuff here.
Yeah.
But the only catch with that is that anything that he would improvise on the fly, we had little earpieces in, and Ty, the flight instructor, would be just having to on the fly shout instructions through these earpieces in our ears to make sure that we were doing the right controls. So
Right.
you'd have Carrie in one earpiece, you'd have Ty in the other earpiece.
Oh,
He's
wow.
he's telling you there's this coming, it's hit the engine,
Yeah.
whatever, and then Ty's on the spot going, right, okay, so you need to feather that one, then you're gonna need to half throttle off.
Yeah.
So you're going,
Isolate this switch and this, that. Yeah.
exactly. So he's shouting, you're trying to act. In the end, you're just concentrating, which there you go,
Which
that's what you would have
which
been.
gives the great, which will get, yeah, but that will give the best, that will give the correct result,
Yeah,
essentially.
exactly.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
the most stressful bit was they would say this stuff and then they'll be like, right, we're going for another take. And then Ty in your ear will be like, right, well, now we've got to reset the continuity on the controls. And you're like, oh. So you'd have to reset everything back to what it was. It was like a memory game. And then you do the take again. You'd be like, okay, cool. We're doing this control. This is going here. Oh, shit.
But those challenges, those I always found in acting, it's like when you have something to do, the
Yeah.
more challenging it is, the better it is
Oh, absolutely.
for the scene, and the less, it's they're easier scenes to do when it's the way you have to think with move your body and operate things and
Yeah.
do and it's much more engaging. You get really into it then, don't
Yeah,
you?
that's my favorite day of work.
Yeah,
When
the
when
whole
it's
thing about acting and performance just disappears, doesn't it?
yeah,
Because
when it's an adventure or when it's
yeah,
you got to concentrate. Like
yeah,
that's my favorite day on the job. You got to
yeah,
be somewhere random. You got to be somewhere cold. You got to be somewhere
yeah,
complicated. I love it.
yeah. Good stuff.
There's no way I could concentrate on two things at once, man. I'd have made a fool of myself.
Mm.
People
Oh,
told
we
me,
all did that plenty of time.
I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm pretty sure that everybody listening to this particular podcast has already seen the show at least once, possibly twice. So I do apologize for the spoiler alert. But should we talk through the iconic scene?
The iconic scene is in the what happens to
Yeah, when the policeman thing goes down and
Yeah.
Barry decides to stay with him. And,
yeah, that's pretty rough.
yeah, that's pretty rough.
It was pretty rough. And weirdly, they had to veer away from the what was reported to have happened because A, it was insanely graphic, and B, would have been too complicated to shoot.
Yeah, sorry, let me Leighton, who's our producer, is listening. We actually got a message from Matt Mabe about this. Can you just pop it up, what he said, Leighton? Because it was somebody actually watching from another ship. And it been the most harrowing thing he's ever seen. I think the whole thing was in flames, and flames just shooting at it.
The oxygen tanks behind the cockpit got hit and went up.
Yeah.
Causing a fireball. it engulfed the cockpit, and miraculously, just speaking on terms of what happened to Rick, he managed to squeeze out of the cockpit window while it was on fire, while he was wearing all of his gear. Honestly, when you see the size of these things, I have no idea. Cockpit was on fire. He didn't have a choice. He managed to squeeze out of the cockpit window and was reportedly holding on as it was going down, and he managed to get out and pull the parachute. So
yeah, we've got, I think, say Bob Wolf says he saw a plane with flames coming out of every opening. And he said the image stayed with Bob for, well, it looks like for the rest of his life and haunted him. He said like flames are just coming out of every single, window and opening in the aircraft.
So then what happened to Rick? So he's clinging on to the side and managed to pull his sheet.
Yeah, he managed to pull the parachute, and that was one of the only articles that I could find when we were doing the research that people had hope for him being MIA as opposed to KIA. But by the sounds of it, his body was actually found still in the parachute harness, hung from a tree, and it seems that he'd hit the tail fin.
Oh no!
Yeah, but that was another article that I read later. So I don't actually know whether that was confirmed whether he'd hit the fin, but his body was found still in the parachute harness. So he did get out of the plane.
But something knocked him unconscious, whether it was,
or just took him out. Yeah.
So, well, he was hanging on to a 15-ton aircraft as it was falling through the sky on flames. So there's quite a lot of danger in there. It's quite a lot. Yeah. So I just so close to get so close, like say, to have your parachute operate, it's essentially bring you down and be found hanging in a tree. That's that's terrible. Like
So as you can tell, that they couldn't really film that one. That would have been half an episode in its own right. That's a stunt. Like, it's crazy. So yeah, that's why they chose to tweak it, so to speak.
I'm just got a message from the 100th Bomb Group Foundation, strange enough. Yeah. And how was it to film that?
Yeah, it was it was more moving than I was expecting, considering the piecemeal nature of how you had to shoot the plane stuff. You didn't get that sort of long take feeling where where you kind of fall into the moment.
Yeah.
There'd be a lot of stopping, a lot of starting, and obviously I had a hell of a lot of prosthetics on as well to get that final bit. But when we actually finally got to the bit where everyone had bailed out and it's just Biddock and Rick in the cockpit, and he's trying to level it out as they go down. They actually let the tape run for that, and it was they'd made it oddly peaceful, which was a really interesting moment as a performer when you've got all of the screen and the shadows going over. They left that realization in the narrative that he's actually not dead yet, and they're trying to control the plane. That was a really surreal moment, looking up at the sort of artificial clouds that we were looking at, and then just playing that moment. And like I said, the rig was hydraulic, and they were actually playing the moment of it losing control. So the whole thing was shaking as we're doing this scene. You could feel it banking as we're going, and obviously Biddock's delivering his lines. It was very, very surreal to have the physical sensation as you're going down.
Yeah. But because that kind of banking, that's when isn't it? I guess it's
just going.
That death roll of we're going down.
Yeah, and the rig they could push the rig as well. It was really going.
It was really tipping, was it?
Yeah, it was dropping the nose and tipping over to the left-hand side, I believe.
Yeah.
Wow. But I think just on a technical note, not really a stunt, but the cockpits are so cramped. When they did the shot of the control panel going, that was wild, because a couple of air cannons in there filled with bits and pieces, and you got a cable, you ratcheted. Essentially, the gag was air cannon goes off as the thing blows up and fake glass, and then it's a ratchet cable through the thing. So you actually when it's at such close proximity and you're getting blasted in the face.
Mm.
It was pretty sketchy. Or it felt
Yeah,
sketchy.
felt it. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, it certainly looked amazing. So,
Yeah,
geez.
their use of practical effects I was very impressed in the show.
But they are the best effects, though, aren't they? Like
Exactly.
I've said this with Matthew many times. It's called enhanced practical. You know, we use CGI to just enhance it, but the basis of the action is a practical stunt.
Mm.
It just elevates everything, I
Yeah,
think.
you believe it. There's a certain level of chaos with practical stunts that no amount of animation
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah,
can double, because it's too precise. You think,
yeah.
this would fall here, this would fall here, but actually in real life, there's just a certain level of chaos that
Can't quite control.
you
Yeah,
can't quite figure out.
And
yeah,
and Jeopardy as well. If you go and do some movies out in Romania or
Yeah,
Bulgaria, which me and Doug both have done, stuntmen just blow themselves up or fall
yeah.
off
They
the.
do. Yeah,
Yeah, buy it to that game. Get somebody else.
yeah. But it's in those. Yeah, but I always say it's those moments where like I've done many of these sort of, as Matthew said, these sort of B movies out in Eastern Europe, and you really get to see what I call movie magic. It really
yeah,
feels magic when things happen, and it's a guy with a bit of string and stuffs this and that,
yeah,
lots of explosives usually, and things going off, and it really, when it comes together, you really go, wow,
yeah, yeah.
it is
There's
great, and of course, when everything is CGI, you just don't get that. You just have to react, and the reaction's always going to be, well, not always, but you know what I mean. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
there's
less
some
of an
that
experience for the
yeah,
performer,
you
isn't it,
can't hide
Dean?
it. Like
Yeah,
there was one time I was working on something out in Morocco, and they've got really strict gun laws over there. You can't even have fake guns. So what they do is, when you want to shoot something, the army turns up, you give them your passport, and they give you a real gun, and they go, "Don't lose this real gun, or we take your passport." So you're doing a gunfight, and everyone's got real AKs. They fill them with full, like, proper size blanks, not half rounds that you get in
yeah,
the
full
UK.
bleed.
And then
Yeah,
you're like, suddenly, there's 15 blokes all firing AKs on automatic, and you're in the desert, and you're like, what the hell is going on here? You're deaf,
yeah,
your ears are ringing. They call
yeah,
cut, and they're like, here you go, fresh magazine, right? Take two, let's go.
yeah. I mean,
You say they
obviously,
have strict gun laws in Morocco. It seems like they have very lax gun laws in Morocco. And the
yeah,
guide is strict, because as long as you hand somebody a passport, fake or not, they'll give you an AK-47.
Yeah, they're like, you're not leaving the country.
That's fine. Passport's fake, mate. I'm just keeping the AK. It's absolutely
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so I noticed, and this is kind of a bit of an offbeat question. I was just checking out your IMDb and everything, and I noticed that you made a short film recently, set out in no man's land. Is it
Oh
called
yeah.
Camera? Did I get that
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That possibly may be one of those things that never sees the light of day. Sometimes they don't. But like, is Masters the favorite thing you've ever filmed, or is there something that's more kind of lower budget that you were more involved in? Like
yeah.
just a moment.
So with that one, I was just sort of helping out on, just sort of agreed to come on board to help out with that one. In terms of the favorite thing I've ever done, weirdly, it's a series that will never see the light of day in the UK. It was for Hulu. It was called No Man's Land, ironically.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
But it's all about the war in Syria.
Okay.
Um, honestly, the writing for it just blew me away when we first got it, because it's all about the YPJ, the female fighters over in Syria that were fighting against ISIS.
Mhm.
It's about a French foreign national that got embroiled in the whole thing. He's a bit like Alice in the Looking Glass, and then through the Looking Glass. And then the storyline that I got involved with is about three best mates from London that go over to fight for ISIS, and I was like, what a story!
Yeah,
Because the whole point of that story was, it's obvious that they're the bad guys.
mm.
We don't need to you don't need to tell the audience that bit. But when you're following their characters in the series, they're just dorky mates. They're dorky mates from Southeast London that end up, beheading people and shooting people. But then there's scenes of them like checking in on each other and making sure that they're okay. And when I read that script, I was like, fuck me, you don't get that very often. And it will never see the light of day in the UK, but that's the thing that I'm probably most proud of because it's proper I don't want to sound like a wanker, but it's nuanced because they're not spoon feeding the audience. Not that Masters did that either, but they've got the benefit of spectacle as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the spectacle and the history of it. But yeah, no, I agree. If you can get characters that have, because just making a decision to go and join something like that is obviously, and it's, done by things that are unsaid, and I don't know, always kind of, yeah, they're the most interesting roles. They don't always come my way either. To try and get those is quite difficult, but yeah, it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, it's one of those weird ones where, sorry, man.
I was going to say it's just cool to be part of something. I guess you'd call that edgy, but it's like you respect the audience enough to let them make their own mind up.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be completely binary where you just say, this is how you're supposed to feel because of X, Y, that you can literally say, look, this is a new, like say, nuanced or complicated story. You don't have to root for these guys, but this is what these guys did. And it's going to mess with you a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Because nothing is binary.
No.
Was it based on anything factual? Was it based on? I mean, obviously there was that famous guy. What did they call him? Who was an English guy from London that was beheading people.
Jihadi John.
Jihadi John, that's right. And they finally got him, didn't they?
No, it's not a true story in that sense, but they did base it off of the kind of guys that went out there. And again, I was really lucky to sort of come across it and audition for it. It was because I'm a white guy as well. And there's been about three white guys from the UK that actually went over and did they or did they not fight for the Islamic State? They say that they didn't, but then people on the ground are very much like, yeah, you did.
Yeah.
So it was that not drew it to me because, no one was offering me the part. I had to fight for it like everyone else. But that was really, really interesting. And they did a second series of it, and again, waiting for that to come out and all that sort of stuff. But when you get those sort of stories where they're not spoon feeding it to you, and obviously it's more terrifying when you have that because the characters that we've got, they're friends, they love each other, they have families, they have kids. You see that in the show, but then in the next scene, tie someone to a post that's innocent, shoot them, and then go and like have dinner, and you're like, well, that's what makes it scarier. You don't need to just be bad guys in black. It's terrifying when they are human.
Yeah, and like Matthew said, it's very rare to get something that is as complex as that, really, without having to, sort of ruin any kind of script by, as Matthew said, spoon feeding the audience with what's, interesting. So you'd like to do more work like that in the future? How's things going?
I mean, yeah, definitely.
It's difficult, isn't it? You got to take the jobs you get at the end of the day.
Exactly. Like, I'm not famous, so you do the work that comes your way, and you try and do it as good as you possibly can, or as well as you can, and with your interpretation.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a bit weird at the minute, and the industry's a bit weird at the minute. Everything's still really quiet after the strikes.
No,
I'm finding it as well.
Back in England a couple of weeks ago, because I had a tour, we were doing a tour of Europe and everything, doing a battlefield tour, and I stopped back in via London with a mate of mine who's an editor, and he's quite a high-end editor, and I'd never known him not work before. And he's like, I haven't worked in months, and his wife is a showrunner, and she hasn't worked in months. And I was like,
it's really strange, isn't it?
But do you need to borrow some money off me?
No, but it is a really strange time for the business, and you can't understand it because, like I said, with these subscription platforms, they've got to have content, otherwise their whole business fails. So I thought when all these subscription platforms came about, and now we've got like half a dozen or so, that the work would be ramped up. Yeah, it does happen, but then it, as you know, as you mentioned, it kind of goes to names. Everything goes to a bloody name. There has to be a name behind it. It's kind of so the fight is still the same to get work. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. But it's weirdly, you're right. Everyone, it's not just actors at the minute. Everyone's really quiet, and especially in
yeah,
the UK, no one has a clear answer. Like
yeah,
some guys
yeah,
I know completely out of work.
yeah,
Catering people are out of work.
Right,
yeah.
yeah.
That's not a good sign.
I
No,
think the theory is, speaking to my friend Mark and everything, who's way smarter than me, is that the streaming platforms are having to rejig their business plan, and that in fact, uh, broadcast TV that used to get advertising on and all the rest of it had it right the first time. And they're going to have to go back to that model to be able to keep income coming in.
right.
Because I don't know about you, but all the time that Netflix keep greenlighting these shows, I just kept thinking, where's the money coming from? Where
Yeah,
is it coming from? It's kind of like it seems like one massive Ponzi scheme sometimes, and like
yeah,
also because of the way that they're structured more like a corporate business. So what's happening is you've got three or four guys at the top just creaming off all the money, and all the bonuses and everything, and they're not doing what broadcast TV does, but reinvesting. So they're
yeah,
going to have to think things, and I think it's a period of rethinking at the moment, where guys are like,
Yeah.
this is
and
not
also,
sustainable.
yeah, and also it becomes just about numbers and the the work, the quality of the work doesn't always, you know what I mean?
Mm.
There's a lot more business people in the
Yeah.
business than there are creative people working their way up, if you see what I mean. It's more of
Yeah.
a, it's, and I just think there's just a slightly different philosophy behind that.
Mm.
And,
But either way, it's a strange time. It's a very strange,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
but everyone cracks on.
absolutely.
Indeed.
We've all been there, mate. God, yeah.
So we've had you for nearly an hour, so I'll let you go in a second. So at this point, I kind of know the answer to this question because I was listening earlier when you said it. But it's at this point we subhead our podcast the Nearly Men. So I always ask everybody, all my prey, is there something you nearly could have been? Like, could you nearly have been a prima ballerina? Did you nearly
Oh, do you
drive
know
a
what?
cab?
Yeah,
Did you
weirdly.
nearly get cast a Superman? It can be an
No,
actress.
no, no, no. I
You
would.
mentioned your dad worked on the tools. You worked on
Yeah,
Yeah,
tools with
right.
your dad. What's that then?
Both our
yeah,
ears pricked up there. We were both thinking, tools, we do tools, right? We do, we do. I've been
yeah.
on
So
tools.
yeah, my man's a builder, and when things are quiet, I still work with him definitely.
Yeah. What's his trade though? Is he a
Oh,
brickie or a chippy?
everything, everything,
Right. Okay.
everything builder. Like,
Yeah.
but in terms of nearly, very, very nearly a stuntman. That was
Yeah,
that was
that's on your IMDb page.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
So
you're an actor and a stuntman.
I
Yeah, I
still
was going to ask
dabble.
you about
I
Can you
still
put
dabble, but
can you put brackets nearly just for us?
nearly stuntman, yeah, yeah, because it
that.
was
So
like over in the UK, like
you got two stunt credits, right?
yeah, 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 and there's others. So I do a lot of stunts for video games, but that's because that you don't see your face.
Mm,
You can get away with it. Whereas in film, if you're like, wait a minute, I did a job with you where you're an actor and now you're the stunt guy, people get a bit funny about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what's keeping me going at the minute while acting's quiet. I sort of do stunts for video games, which again is a very, very new thing.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I work with a crew called Lucky 13 Action, and they've done all sorts of mad stuff. Like they're big in the video game world, and they did there's a horror film called Host. Have you heard of that? It was all shot over Zoom, and it won a load of awards because the whole horror film is like a Zoom chat, but they managed to do like some terrifying stuff. But yeah, so I sort of hang out with those boys because that was what I originally wanted to do. But
so you must have trained as that then, because there's a lot of hoops to go through as a stuntman, isn't there?
yeah, so I never did the British Stunt Register, and that's why
Right.
it's nearly because you're never going to get on the big jobs
Mm,
without being on that,
yeah.
or that's a whole other conversation. But
Yeah.
in theory, you don't get on the big jobs without doing that. But yeah, no, I did all the training. I always wanted to be an actor, but I don't know anybody. Like I'm from a very sleepy village in Dorset where nobody knows nothing. Like I thought I like acting, but I'm never going to get anywhere.
Mm,
So I sort of started doing all that stuff, went to drama school, did the training to do stunts, but we just ended up doing this insane play, which I got a really good part in. And the rest is history, agents,
mm,
sort of stuff. So was very lucky in that regard. But then I didn't go down the stunt route.
So what's the most dangerous stunt you did then up to this point, or the one that you're most proud of?
And can you demonstrate it now on camera?
No, definitely not. I'm getting old now. It's about 4-hour warm up before you do anything. Best stunt. I've done a few wire gags, which are always quite fun. You know, getting pulled through things.
Yeah.
Most of it's fight stuff for video games. But yeah, they've done some cool stuff for some games coming up, but they're all stupidly hush video games, aren't they? It's all NDAs and don't.
I don't want to get fired, mate, and talk about the fact that you did GTA, whatever it is. Sweet.
Exactly. If you even mention the company name, and I'm screwed. So
okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about computer games anyway, so it doesn't matter. I do computer science. Boring bugger. Well, listen, mate, it's been fantastic talking to you, and it's very impressive you managed basically to talk about Masters for an hour, which is great. You just rounded it out perfectly. But thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me.
We have a tour coming up in September where we're taking almost all of the Roses Riveters crew around the area and stuff, but we will probably be reaching out to other guys as well. Come on tour with us, come and see stuff, meet people. I mean, the tour will be sold out in like 42 minutes. Then we had to make it a bus as well. So there's huge interest in it, but we'll be reaching out for you to come on one of these tours and hang out with guys, get you paid and signing things and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, come along, Dean. It'll be good fun. It'd be really interesting.
Sounds really interesting.
Yeah, you'd have a good time. Yeah.
Doug's really good. I just make rubbish jokes all the time. There's some flint to it. There's some flint.
Nice.
Well, thanks very much, man. We really appreciate having you on. Have a really nice day, and it's been a pleasure, mate. Thank you so much.
Cheers,
yeah, lovely to meet you, Dean. I wish you and your family well, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye.
All right, cheers. He's a lovely guy as well, isn't he? They're all lovely. They're all tied together, aren't they? They're all so
nice-looking, erudite, smart.
Yeah.
You know, egoless.
Yeah, totally down to earth. Lovely guy. Yeah. Oh, I hope he comes on one of the tours. I think he'd be
good, actually, because he seems
a great asset. Yeah.
He'd be a full-on history nerd, that dude. He's going to get real deep into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder what people were asking Dale Dye for him to get upset. That must be really fun.
Yeah, we need to find that out.
Dale, what are those crops in the field over there? Coughed up a rat in disgust. Well, listen, fella, I better crack on. I heard my baby wake up not too long ago. You think someone's going back to sleep, but I'm going to try and steal 20 minutes underneath it.
Do it. It's lovely to see you.
Yeah, you too, brother. All right, fellas. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. It's been a great podcast. Cheers, Dougie. Cheers to Dean. Cheers to Leighton. And we will crack on again next week. Thanks, fellas. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Bye.